that are consumed in an economy. And then the reason why there is public interest, and then move on to public policy, and then talk about public policy analysis, and then talk about the program. So once we finish it, then we transit and start the program thereafter. So if you look at the goods and services, I'm just using goods for goods and services consumed in an economy. There are four classes into which you can put them in terms of whether they are rival goods or they are excludable. And when we talk about a good being a rival good, what you mean is that the consumption of that good or service by one individual limits the consumption of other people, limits its availability to other people. And when you say a good is non-rival in consumption, so what we mean is that the good can be consumed by everyone at the same time without somebody's consumption affecting the other person. That's one dimension of goods and services, the rivalry. Then the second dimension is about excludability. So, and that is whether you can exclude some individuals from consuming the good by means of a restriction, for instance, fees, asking people to pay fees, or putting some gates in the way so that it's not freely available to everybody. So those goods, we say they are excludable. Then some goods are non-excludable. And what it means is that you cannot exclude individuals from its consumption by means of a restriction. Now, so every good and service that are produced in an economy, and when I say produced, I mean from financing, from input markets, from the production of itself, from getting the goods to the consumer. Because we say in basic economics that production is incomplete until the good gets to the consumer. So when I use production, I mean all the activities from the beginning to the end in terms of making that good available. Every good is can be classified on account of rivalry and excludability when it comes to consumption. And the purpose and the objective of a social planner is basically maximizing social welfare, which is most of the time measured by, in most cases, by the time we get to maybe welfare economics, we can see that measured by mainly consumption. Now, so because of these two dimensions in terms of describing the nature of goods and services consumed in society, it means there are four natural classes of goods. Now, we have the private goods. Private goods are both rival and excludable. For example, food we eat, food, clothing, car, a house, and so on and so forth. So if I buy food and I eat it, the next person can't eat the same food that I'm eating. Clothing, these look at personal private goods. They are rival and they're also excludable in consumption. Some goods are non-rival, but they're excludable in consumption. That is, the consumption of that good, one person consuming it, doesn't really limit or preclude another person from consuming it, maybe non-rival. But you can exclude people from consuming that good. We refer to those goods as natural monopolies. For example, cable TV, all right, satellite radio. So by cable TV, if you are watching a channel, watching CNN, I'm watching CNN in my house, you're watching CNN in your house, my watching CNN doesn't limit your ability to watch CNN. in terms of non-rivalry. But not everybody can have access to CNN. They have to pay to get the right or to be admitted into consuming, into viewing CNN. Those goods that are non-rival in consumption but excludable, we classify them as natural monopolies. Now let's come to the third quadrant, which is the class of goods we refer as common goods. So common goods are rival in consumption in the sense that the more one person consumes, the less the other person can consume. But in terms of excluding people, they are often non-excludable. Example, fish in the open sea. As long as we don't have territorial issues, if it's a sea that is, waters, the waters that sort of belong to our territory, okay, anyone can go there to fish. But the more somebody fishes, the more somebody catches fishes, the less quantity of fishes are available for the other person to catch. Those are common goods. Sometimes we use children in extended families and living systems to be like common goods, right? When we derive services from the service of, when we derive utility from service of children, right? So the more somebody consumes, the less other person can consume. That in settings where children are referred to as common goods. That happens in some societies. Then the last category, we have public goods, military, law and order, information that is shared, that is usually created as a public good for society at large. When government shares information, it shares to everybody. Now, so these are the basic classification of goods and services that are consumed in society. Now, why are we talking about this? We will see it shortly. We will see where we're going shortly. Now, the classification of goods, as I've showed in the previous slide, is based on many factors. Let's look at two levels. Number one, technology and legal attributes. For example, when we talk about rivalry, the degree of rivalry is purely a technological attribute. For instance, a person's use of a purely rival good precludes its use by another person, right? The excludability combines both technology and legal attributes of the good. For example, a good is excludable if the owner can prevent others from sharing the benefits derived from its use. The means of preventing other people are often backed by legal means. Okay, now, at the same time, some goods can also be classified on the basis of funding, who is financing its provision. For instance, a good that is publicly funded by the government, funded by the public sector, is considered non-excludable because the public sector government is there to provide for everyone. But then, congestion of consumption may transform a non-rival good into a rival good. A rival good, as I said, is a good in which one person's consumption limits the other person's consumption. For instance, let's take highways. Okay, so let's take highways. So if there's congestion on the highway, my use of the highway, for example, if there's a congestion somewhere, if I get onto the road, right, how far I can go, the other people behind me, right, my being on the road will limit how, the rate at which they can also make progress towards where they're going. When you talk about congestion, you mean things like when there are too many people sort of using that and using the service at the same time, and so creating some clogging. Okay. Now, so if you look at these classifications, so one question is, if you leave markets alone to just do their thing, let markets work, right? Then what you see is that markets, the kind of goods you see in the economy will be just private goods, because those are rival goods and excludable goods. Mostly. Now, first and foremost, if markets are left alone, private markets will produce socially optimal quantities of only private goods because it's based on demand and supply, willingness to buy, and willingness to sell, willingness to buy. You want to buy, I want to sell, we agree on price, and then the trade is done. But all the other goods will not be produced at socially optimal quantities. Therefore, the consumption of those goods will be suboptimal, therefore reducing social welfare. For instance, goods that are classified as natural monopolies, that is, goods that are excludable but non-rival in consumption. Those goods, market will supply at too expensive prices, and that will exclude a large segment of society. So what happens is government steps in with strict regulations and pricing policy, although the government has to give something in return, okay, in return. In terms of common resources, society is likely to overconsume and underinvest in the good. Left alone, such goods which is we've heard about some waters where almost all the fishes have been caught and then they're almost dry, almost not having fishes again.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the slide has not been moving.
Oh,
Hmm.
wow. So is it still at slide number 1, classification?
Yes, sir. Certificate in the introduction.
We've been on that since you started.
The first.
Oh,
That's never moved.
The
it
very
hasn't
first slide.
moved? Oh,
That's never moved. Yeah.
okay. Wow. Let me do
Oh.
it again.
There we go.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe I should just leave it this way. Okay. So this second slide, when I was talking about the attributes that inform the classification of the goods into whether they are rival goods or non-rival, as well as whether they are excludable or non-excludable. Legal attributes, for example, there are legal ways of preventing people from being able to consume the good. If there are no legal ways of doing that, then you can't. Then that good is not likely to be excludable. And then another area is whether who is funding the delivery, the production of the good. So funding, if government is paying for some good, is considered to be non-excludable. You can't exclude somebody from benefiting from the good. Then, for example, a rival good, if there's congestion, so a non-rival good, if there's congestion, it can become a rival good. There are a lot of instances of that one can think about. Now, I hope you can see this slide. I've moved to the top slide now.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. So if you leave markets alone, they'll produce at socially optimal quantities of only private goods. Their private markets are there to make profits, and their business are based on willing buyer, willing seller. Somebody is asking some goods, I'm going to produce it, and they're going to have it. And if a good I'm going to produce, and I'm not going to be able to, for example, recover my cost, or produce a good that anybody can consume so that people can consume without paying, private markets won't go there, basically. So apart from the private goods segment, all the other segment, those other 3 areas, the private market is unlikely to go there, or private market may be there, but in terms of social optimality in terms of the quantities available and the pricing, we won't have optimality in their production. And when I'm in production, not just producing it, but also consuming it. So for natural monopolies, market will supply at too expensive prices. and exclude a lot of people. So in this way, in this case, government steps in with some regulations, maybe some pricing policy too. In terms of common resources, society will overconsume and underinvest in the goods, and then the goods may disappear. So in this case, sometimes government steps in by assigning property rights, and so that then they can privatize the streams of benefits, and then you solve the problem. Now, but in terms of public goods, market will supply at too low quantities and exorbitant cost. So government steps in these cases by taking over its production. We'll talk about examples later. Now, so public interest. So when we talk about public interest goods, right? They are not public goods per se, but when we say public interest good, they're just goods meant to advance the general well-being of society. And any good in which there can be underproduction, under consumption, and exclusion of many people from consumption, and in some cases, markets won't develop naturally, then but are essential for public, for welfare, for maximizing the welfare of society at large. Those goods, some of them are private goods, some of them are natural monopolies, some of them are common resources, right? Now, so if you pick all those goods together, you put them in a class, public interest goods, then our classification from 4 reduces to 3. So you have something like this. You have pure private goods that are still excludable and rival. Then in the middle, you have public interest goods that are either excludable or rival. Then you have pure public goods that are non-excludable and non-rival. Now, if you want to look for examples, so pure private goods are excludable and rival, so that's fine. But in terms of public interest goods, example, in education, if society is undereducated, right? Not a lot of people have capabilities to produce, to have skills that are productive in the economy. Government will be concerned, and they will want to ensure that people are educated. If women are not well educated, and therefore, but women's education is good for reducing maternal mortality and so on and so forth, government will step in and say, hey, we need to support, expand education opportunities to women who are unable to pay, who are unable to just go to school by themselves. Sometimes even government has to actually write laws making it a crime to keep people away from school and so on and so forth. So those are public interest goods, right? In that case, some of them are private goods, but at the same time, they are public interest goods. That is the goods that market can produce. For example, in education, you have private education system, public education system. If the private system does not produce enough, the public sector will step in to say, we need to expand this production. In education, in health, in housing, in employment, other social services, even in transport, in information, in industry, in environment also. Now, those are a lot of areas there are classified as public interest goods because of the fact that those goods can be produced at suboptimal levels, and therefore the public welfare is not maximized. Then the third one are what we call the pure public goods, and those ones are primarily areas for government. For instance, defense and security, internal order, legal system. Those are basic functions of government. If a government cannot say that it's existing if these 3 areas in particular, if they are not well provided, if the services are not well provided, we say that government fails when it's unable to secure its people, defend its people, when it's unable to maintain internal order, or is unable to have a legal system where people whose rights are alienated can seek redress in the course of law. So we generally say if the government fails on these pure public goods, then our government has failed, basically. Now, let me just for example. Now, this classification can also happen within sectors. For example, in healthcare sector, let's say, in healthcare sector, you have goods that are pure private goods. For example, personal curative care. I want to get diarrhea treatment and ARIs, let's say. Then you have pure public goods which are primarily roles of government: vector control, health education, contact tracing, right? Which are most a lot of the preventive care services and mechanisms. But in the middle, you have things like immunization. Why should government care about immunization? Because if immunization rates are low, then disease transmission can happen in society, and one person can start packing sickness from one person to the other. So immunization becomes, although generally people should be able to buy immunization service for themselves, but it becomes, if it's underproduced, underprovided, it becomes a good of public interest. Immunization, malaria, TB, sexually transmitted infections, family planning, right? So they have elements of both preventive care and public health issues. Okay, so once we begin public interest, then we have the economy split into three, let's say. And then as we move from pure private goods to pure public goods, you see reduced willingness of private markets to provide the good optimally, and therefore increased need for government support or public provisioning. So, pure public goods, primary roles of government, pure private goods, private markets, willing to sell by suppliers. Market clearing principles guarantee efficiency, basically. But the third one is the public interest goods. It's a range of private goods, natural monopolies, common resources. Markets are now natural in some cases due to externalities, requiring some effort from government. Private goods are undersupplied by private markets, or goods where segment of society is excluded from consumption, therefore requiring government intervention. Examples can be found in several sectors that just as listed there. Now, this sector, the public interest goods segments of the society, is actually the focus of this program. Is the focus of public policy, essentially. Although you have public policy in defense, right? You have defense policy, right? You have security policy. You have, legal policy on legal system, and so on and so forth. But we are focusing on the middle, in the public interest goods. That's where the focus of this program is. Okay. So, what is public policy? If suppose we were to define public policy, what is it? People have different definitions. I just picked this from some material to see different ways in which people define public policy. Some people say it's the outcome of the struggle in government over who gets what, right? It is some of government activities, whether acting directly or through agents, right? Having some influence on the citizens. Some people might say public policy is what our government chooses to do or not to do. Then, so a statement by government at whatever level, in whatever form, or what it intends to do about a public problem, and so on and so forth, or a course of action adopted by government in response to public problems. So people can have ways of defining public policy. It depends on the way one thinks about it. But regardless of the definition of the way people are thinking about it, and regardless of the type of public policy one is looking at, regardless of the sector, regardless of the sector, public policy have three basic features. Number one, it aims to address a well-defined problem. A well-defined problem. That's one. And then based on that problem, it aims to achieve a well-defined goal. And then you have the problem, you have the goal, you have this problem that is the situation analysis. You have the goal, like your target where you want to get to. You want to address these issues and get somewhere. And then you have a set of instruments that should help you move from where you are to where you want to get to. So a problem, a goal, or a target, then a set of instruments to make you leap from where you are to where you're going. So those are three major elements Key features. You can have discussions about how policies are formulated, how policies are designed, how policies are implemented, and so on and so forth. But when you talk about a public policy, these three key elements are essential. Now, let's look at the instruments. When you talk about the instruments are meant to catalyze achievement of the desirable outcomes, and they are meant to influence or alter the behavior of the public, basically. So, some policies come with incentives. So if you do this, you get this. If you do this, you get this benefit. For example, let's say the target of the policy is companies, firms, organizations. So we want you to produce optimally. We want you to enter this market, and we say we are going to give you tax credits if you invest in this. We are going to give you different kind of benefits if you invest here. So the incentive for the firms to enter that sector is part of the instruments, and it's meant to sort of change or influence or alter the behavior of the policy targets, which is companies. So different policies are in different areas. What the instruments tend to do is to alter or to some incentive to sort of change the behavior, alter the behavior of the public, so that we're able to move from where we are currently, from the problem we have identified, and then move to where we want to get to. And then with policy, then you have a plan, a strategic plan, for example, has where you are now, where you want to get to in a defined period of time, and then looking back, how you want to get there, what kind of things you want to do, what kind of strategies you want to implement. Those are like the instruments and so on, so for interventions, instruments. Now, the goal of or objective of policy intrinsically is to maximize public welfare, either present welfare or future welfare. And it also has to do with using limited resources available. Now, if you look at this, right? If you look at this, you want to maximize public welfare, we want to use the resources we have or we can have access to, and then we want a change to happen from where we are now to a particular place we want to get to. If you think about that for a second, so who is the public? Let's say, when you say public can mean different levels. There are different levels of targets. It could be communities, it could be firms and organizations, it could be socioeconomic groups, it could be households, it could be individuals. So depending on the policy, what is the target? Whose outcomes are we trying to influence? Are we trying to change? Or are we trying to change, move from where it is currently to where we want it to be? Now the next question is this: how does the public respond? Whether it's individuals, whether it's communities, households, groups, or organizations, the response of the target is an aggregation of the response of individuals. That's what's clear. Because individuals form households, they own firms and organizations and work there, and individuals constitute groups, and individuals constitute communities. So, which means that to understand the response of the public to the policy instruments, you need to start with the individual. If you understand how individuals will respond to the policy, then you can aggregate to higher levels depending on the target of the policy or the unit of analysis. But primarily, how will individuals think about this? How would they see this? Within the settings that you are, in the settings within which you are trying to make changes. Now, what it means then is that if you want to do public policy analysis, I must say, by the way, that analysis for public policy should come before the policy and after the policy. A policy that does not have sound analysis preceding its formation is a joke. You can have well-written, well-crafted policies that you adopted from somewhere, and something like this worked in Tunisia or Indonesia or Latin America. You want to adopt it here, beautifully written, excellently written, and then you want to implement it. Question is, what analysis, what evidence locally is behind or informed the policy that you are setting up? People say that in Nigeria, that we are not short of beautifully written, excellently crafted policies. They will have the problem, we define it, they will have the target we want to get to, they will have the instruments, and so go through the process, and then get to know of it. You see beautiful, if you go to ministries, if you go to agencies of government, you see beautifully crafted policies. Now, but the challenge is, most of these things, if you're from the occupation that we are from, most of them are not, the evidence on which they are based is very weak, very shallow. In fact, sometimes it's people don't even understand exactly the setting they're dealing with. I remember clearly in the 90s, during the administration of IBB, and he put together the best of brains. Chief Olufalaye, all these big people, everyone from the country, he brought them into government, used their brains and so on and so forth. But at some point, all these things weren't working. So if I came to the public and said, the Nigerian economy has defied every logic. So the Nigerian economy has defied every logic. I didn't know when he said that. That was probably in the late 80s to early 90s. But when I got to sort of read that, the question in my mind is, this is a joke. It can't be true. It cannot be true. It's either you don't understand the problems you're trying to solve, or you understand that you're applying the wrong tools in solving the problem. And in fact, I can say that the problem comes from not understanding the problem we're solving. Recently, during the COVID-19 episode, we heard the secretary to the federal government, who came out in public to say, I went round and I didn't know that our primary healthcare system is in such shambles. I had no idea. And he is the secretary to the federal government. All these things pass through him in terms of what the government should do. It's involved centrally, but not in the country. A lot of people running policies, running things, don't even understand the country. When you see people, what they think, how they just make assumptions here and there, you see that the work that needs to be done before policy is not properly done, mostly. If you look around, you will see a litany of failed policies that don't, for example, the policy on, let's say, family planning. If you look at population policy, family planning policy, right from since the 80s or something like that, what you see is this one, they have this plan, they have the target, this instrument. By the time they get at the end of the period, the indices have not moved. They've not changed. They will say it again, they will not change. In fact, sometimes the target is set for 2010, move it to 2014, move it to 2018, move it to 2020, move it to 2030. That target that is set. So now, let's come back to this. Sound public policy analysis will benefit from one, because individuals are at the core. They are the basic, they constitute most of the levels, most of the policy targets, right? Analyzing interactions of economic agents, acting in pursuit of their own private interests. Now, that's the field of microeconomic theory. 2, modeling how the policy instrument impacts the interactions. This is central issue of policy impact evaluation. Then that's in terms of modeling. Then you have to actually measure the impacts of the instrument themselves. This is the focus of econometrics. Now, to do this relies on substantial competencies. in one, understanding and analyzing patterns. When you talk about patterns, trying to understand patterns, that's mathematics. Analyzing and interpreting data, that's statistics. So statistics, math, the essential background, to be able to do these three areas, to be able to do well in these three areas. And now, why is this more important? Somebody talks about statistics, some to mathematics, and so on and so forth. Well, there's a global drift now towards data analytics. To even make any decision, to do analysis, to understand how things are going, there's a drift towards everybody's talking about data and analytics, basically. So public policy analysis is no longer an issue of think talks, right? We'll just gather together and just talk this, talk that, without evidence. And policies must be evidence-based. And the evidence we're talking about, not just descriptive, but analytical evidence. For instance, you're talking about inflation, unemployment rate is this, so, and so. Yeah, you have the statistics, just quote it. Among the youth, it is higher than among the adults. Okay, what else do you have to say? But the question is, analytically speaking, what's driving this? What are the forces? What's driving them? Not just say, oh, it's because of population. Population is just it's not the whole story. Oh, our industries are not creating enough jobs. Well, it's not the whole story, right? In fact, you can even see some research have been done on the fragmentation of the labor markets, right? Difficulty from moving from one segment to the other segment. That a lot of people assume that markets are always free. For example, a lot of macroeconomists will tell you that markets are very fluid. People are mobile from sector to sector. Once there is increase in improvement in earnings in one sector, labor drifts towards that. How much of labor drifts in such instances? They were the data. They don't have the data. It's just assumptions they're making. But sound policy must be based on both, not just descriptive, but analytical evidence. So, the objective here in this program, and I must say, is there are three of them. One, to sort of provide strong foundation in microeconomics and related competencies for public policy analysis. I mentioned macroeconomics for a reason. In this country, we have so many universities, and almost every university has an economics department. But when you look at the research, when you look at the thinking being done in almost everywhere, what you see is that they're mostly focused on macro level issues, inflation, price levels, monetary policy, trade, economic growth, unemployment rate, just the rate, not the dynamics, but just the rate, just aggregate level things. Those are macro level. But to what needs to speak, what needs to drive evidence that we actually need to be able to understand the problem actually we are trying to deal with. You need a lot of microeconomics foundation. And that's one of the things that we're trying to address, we're trying to do in this program. We started this program this time last year internally, and some professors from some universities they came to visit, and then they just was asking, this is micro you're doing? Yes, it's micro. Oh, this thing is dead. In Nigeria, it's dead. We don't do this anymore. This is strange. This is dead. It just shows the extent to which, and without being able to go down to the micro foundations of every problem you see, it's going to be very difficult to say, I understand the problem. So the first problem we have really is that we don't even understand the problems that we have. We don't even understand. Most cases, we don't understand them in terms of public policy. We don't understand clearly. If you understand clearly the problem, That solves most of the problem. It helps our plan, our policy, it helps our planning. We'll come to those ones later. The second objective is to introduce students to selected areas of domestic policy areas, population policy, healthcare, labor, industry, social protection, environment. And these areas deserve rigorous economic analysis, but have received minimal attention, basically, because most of the analysis here now, they are focused on macro level indicators, macro level indices. The third one also is to normalize the culture of evidence-based policy and action. And in the program, as I will describe later, we will be supporting students to conduct empirical research in one of the areas of domestic policy with emphasis on primary data collection. Yeah, because everywhere you go now, you see no data. We don't have data. We don't have data. We don't have data. We have to start reversing that. You have to have data that speaks, that we can analyze and understand the issues, right? Understand the problems. So we can't just keep saying no data, no data. So one of the objectives here is to actually start addressing this issue of no data, no data. So the way the program is organized, maybe I'll come to that now. So we'll support the students to do that, and then we'll supervise it rigorously in a very specific way. All right, what are the outcomes? What do we expect people who come to this program to be able to do? Graduates, they should have the qualifications to complete successfully for candidacy and funding in PhD programs in economics and public policy in top universities globally. Yeah, is one of our objectives. Then the second thing is that those who are pursuing professional routes will also gain the competencies to perform creditably in positions in academic and policy institutions at home and abroad. The structure of the program, so it's a 12-month program into 3 semesters. The first 2 semesters are of coursework, and then the 1 semester of empirical research. So we have taught courses in microeconomic theory, mathematics, statistics, econometrics, policy impact evaluation, and then a capstone project. We also have seminars, one in every semester. Now, in the first semester, we have a seminar in applied general economics. And that will allow students, people from different backgrounds, even those in economics, to gain insight really into the economist's way of thinking on various areas of public policy. And you see practically the application of micro thinking, microeconomic theory into a lot of the things we see in our environment. So, and we have to think about and apply those things. In the second semester, there's a seminar in applied microeconomics, and that's going to be focused on fields that we call population economics, health economics, labor economics, industrial organization, public economics, and environmental economics. So some choices. We'll not be able to cover everything, but we'll introduce students to as many as possible of those fields. And then in the third semester, there's a seminar in the third semester. After we've really gone through the economic thinking, right, the micro level thinking about public policy issues and going through them. In the third semester, we have a seminar that will look at multidisciplinary perspectives on public policy, and we're going to have speakers, local, international faculty from reputable public policy institutions in academia and in government to speak to issues, right, in a multidisciplinary way. Once you have the economic way of thinking, the microeconomic way of thinking, the way to think about it from the bottom, then we'll go to sort of look at other ways of thinking about it from other disciplines. So not just economics. We'll introduce to the other disciplines in a seminar, and it will be interesting. So the curriculum of the program, in the first semester, we have microeconomic theory, math for economies, statistics for economies, then applied general economics seminar. In the second semester, we have continuation of micro theory, where we look at issues about welfare and welfare issues, econometrics, then applied microeconomic and public policy, then policy impact evaluation. In the third semester, there will be an empirical research project that every person will do, and also a seminar, the one I talk about, on multidisciplinary perspectives on public policy. So that's the overview of the public policy analysis program that is starting off today. So the time now is 6:34. We just have about 15 minutes to go. So I will allow you to maybe comments or questions and maybe need for clarifications. So over to you, class. I'll stop presenting. Can you hear me?
Very clear.
Okay. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions,
Thank you so
comments?
much for the presentation, Tayo. I would like to know, with this slide you made available to us.
Oh yes, of course. We will.
Okay.
Every presentation will be available.
All right, that'll be fine.
Yes.
It's been a brilliant presentation so far. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. Any more question? Yes. Dr. Engineer Barrister Professor Jason. Any question you're in? Okay. Anyone else have some questions?
Possibly, it's the first presentation. So, but I think as we proceed, we should be ready for an interactive. Yeah.
Right.
So that was
Awesome.
that. So we all need to be aware that for us to have a very good, it should be interacting in such a way that we'll be having some points to
Yes.
minimize the issue of this kind of traditional way of
Exactly.
public accusation,
Yes.
whereby what you give us, what we give you back, because it's
No.
critical analysis. Then definitely,
Yes.
you know what
Exactly.
it will be like challenge what I have, challenge
Exactly.
what I have.
Yes,
So
true.
so I think that will be fine.
Yes, awesome. In fact, I think the idea would be that in the course of the class presentations or maybe whiteboard sessions, if there's any question, just raise your hand, and then the instructor will stop and say, "Okay, yeah, what's the question?" And then comments and whatever the question is, address it, and then continue from there. Okay, so I also wanted to share the calendar in terms of how the program will run from January 8th today to December 20, 2024. So as we stated, the first semester will run from January to early April. From January to early April. The second one from April to early August. And then the third semester, which is the research semester, will kick in from there. And our expectation is that research semester is not going to be virtual. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be interactive, and it's going to enable us to walk through data analysis, interpretation of it, literature, and so on and so forth. And everyone is supposed to produce a research paper. So can you see my screen?
Very well. Okay.
Okay. So so we're here, academic session, the first semester lecture. So every semester will be every semester there'll be 12 weeks of lectures per semester. So for example, the first semester is broken into 6 weeks of lectures, 1 week of midterm exams, another 6 weeks of lectures, 1 week of reading, one reading week, then 1 week of exam also. So that will conclude the first semester by 19th of April. Then 1 week of break to end on April 26th. And then we resume for the second semester. Another first 6 weeks, 1 week of midterm, another 6 weeks of lectures, then one reading week, and then second semester final exams. So that one will end by 9th of August, 2024. So that will mark the end of the coursework session. Now, after that, the third semester, which is for research. So in the course of the first 2 semesters, I'm sure that there have been areas of interest in terms of what kind of research each person wants to do, and then we'll start the first 3 weeks of the third semester be devoted to maybe developing study tools like protocols and questionnaires, and getting ethical approval for the research. We expect that by August 30 we're done with the protocol, and then from September we can have the fieldwork for about 3 weeks, data collection, and then after that there'll be data quality assurance and analysis, and then followed by another 4 weeks of analysis and synthesis. We intend to have brown bag sessions where we have presentation of preliminary findings from the data, and then after that, so maybe some questions in terms of maybe ways to look at it from those who have expertise in the field, in the area, maybe other things to consider in terms of analyzing the data, how to interrogate the data, and so on and so forth for findings. And then we have another session of draft findings, and then have a final presentation, and then wrap up, and then the research paper will be written. So this approach is, we want to make it empirical in terms of we have areas of social, areas of public policy, areas of policy. One can pick, for example, if it's something about social transfer safety nets, right? Some people might be looking at population issues, like demographic issues, population. Some will be looking at industrial organization, the function of industries, competition, cooperation, and so on and so forth. Others will be looking at environmental issues, right? Others will be looking at labor markets, right? So different areas that people are looking at. We encourage that people should collect data, right? Do data collection, do the field work, go collect the data, and come on. In fact, even doing the field work itself is an experience. And in fact, in terms of graduate school, graduate program, PhD programs, there's a premium on people who have experience doing field work. For instance, in economics programs, we're not just interested in training classroom economists. People that just sit in the class and they learn all the economics in class and they pass the exam in class. Economics is out there now. It's there in the world. That's how you understand the world. That's how you understand economics. And you should go out there and collect data and show us exactly what data is saying. And what does it say? What the data say? And how does that relate to what the literature is saying, to what we know before? Is it supporting? Are you finding a nuance or something like that? And how does that speak to the literature in that area? And how does that support what area of policy is this? What's the implication of this for policy, and so on and so forth? So the research has to be able to answer those questions. That's the plan. So that by December 24th, Friday, the people will submit it, and then so we wrap up. And it's a great experience. The one we did last time, the research period was really, really fantastic. We're not going to say, for your research, go and write chapter 1. and bring it. And go chapter 2 and bring it. What are those for? Evidence one, use of no data. We want to. I mean, we don't want to perpetuate that history of no data. We want to ensure that people can understand data. People can speak based on data. It's difficult for me to say anything without data. That I've seen or that I've analyzed. So this is a semester, the whole year is going to run, and the research phase of it is really interesting. I'm sure that you'll find it very, very interesting. So this is syllabus. So it will be circulated for preparation. All right. So 5 minutes more to the end of the class. If anyone has maybe thoughts or feedback, please go ahead.
So from the timetable, sir, good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Kwahi. From the timetable, I saw something like brown bag session. Can you throw more light on this?
Thank you so much. Brown bag sessions are sessions where you present preliminary analysis of your data for insight. I mean, you present it and you tell us exactly what you think you are seeing in the data. And then we sort of look through it together. Is that really what data is saying? Are there other things you need to look at in the data that might give you better understanding of itself? For instance, if you collect data in a setting, in an environment, there's something called the data generating process. So a process would have generated that data. You are collecting, now let's say, from the classes, from the first 2 semesters, you've read about several things, you've seen relationship between variables and that. So you are exposed to the literature. In the second semester, we have different fields that related. I know I've gone through the literature. Now, when you collect data, what you are looking for in the data, why you do analysis, do econometrics, do other things, because you are trying to understand the process generating the data. What is behind the data? What is data saying about the context from which it was collected, right? So doing that requires different ways in statistics, for example, different ways of analyzing data, different tests you can do to understand what data is saying. It is when we understand what data is saying that we think we have something to say. We say we have a research done, we have a paper, we found something. But without understanding what data is saying, and the approach here is not just saying one model was used somewhere, I want to bring that model, I want to come and run it on some data here. What you're saying basically is that the society, the context from which that thing was done there is the same as your context here. And it may not be. So the first thing to do is to even have the data, let the data speak to you. So different people have different capabilities in understanding what data is saying. So you bring it up, your preliminary understanding of the data, you bring it up to those who are more familiar with that area. And then we look through it, you present it, we review it with you and say, look at this again, look at that again, look at that area. Look at all these variables, look at these correlations, look at this test, do that test and see what you get from it, how it tells you the story, how the data speaks to you. So that's the brown bag. It's like preliminary presentations of what you think the data is saying, basically. I hope it's clear.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm just 2 minutes to the end of the class. The class will end at 6:50. So each class is 1 hour 20 minutes long, maybe short or long. So, for example, there are 4 classes, and really everything speaks to themselves, speak to one another, do math statistics and do micro theory, and then the seminar also introduces us to really important issues, policy level issues, policy driven subjects, issues in different sectors, different areas of public policy. So I it's really going to be an exciting time learning with us over this period, and we'll do our best to ensure that you have a very enjoyable session, very enjoyable time, and learning and interacting, and also applying those skills to just a specific area, right? Demonstrating that you've learned some things, you've understood, that you've acquired some capabilities, and then applying it to sort of produce some evidence that may be very useful. I mean, we're going to have some time to discuss some of the evidence that we've built up from our research here. All right. So I think I will on this note, thank you so much for your time. I would like to, this is 6:50, end of the class has come. Thank you so much. And so I look forward to more interactions in the course of the semester and the course of the year. Thank you so much. All right. Have a good evening. Okay. Thank you.